Welcome back to Beyond the Pages. I always say the right book at the right time can truly change everything, and I think today we're diving into one with that potential.
Oh, absolutely. I think Atomic Habits by James Clear has really, it's really resonated with a lot of people.
It really has. And it's interesting because Clear's journey into this field actually began with a pretty life-altering experience.
Yeah.
A near-fatal baseball accident when he was in high school
Right.
left him with severe injuries, and he had to painstakingly rebuild his life,
Wow.
habit by habit.
Yeah. It's uh it's amazing how that experience was such a powerful catalyst for him. He was kind of forced to confront this reality that small changes consistently applied could lead to extraordinary outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's like the foundation of his whole philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, he turned a traumatic experience into this profound insight. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how does this connect to the core idea of atomic habits then?
Well, Clear emphasizes this concept of compounding, which is basically the idea that small improvements made consistently over time can lead to massive results.
Okay.
He uses a brilliant analogy in the book. If you improve just 1% each day for a year, you'll end up almost 38 times better than when you started.
Wow. That's mind-blowing. It's like the snowball effect, right?
Exactly.
Start small, but it gained momentum over time.
Exactly. And that's the magic of Atomic Habits. It's about focusing on those tiny changes that, when compounded over time, create remarkable transformations.
Yeah.
Think about an area of your life where you'd like to see massive improvement.
But
Your health, your relationships, your finances, anything, right?
yeah.
Now imagine the impact of making consistent 1% improvements each day.
Okay. I'm definitely starting to see the potential here. But how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah.
How do we build those atomic habits?
Well, Clear lays out a framework called the four laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And these laws apply whether you're trying to build good habits or break bad ones.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's break down those laws. What does make it obvious mean in practical terms?
It's all about setting up your environment to trigger the desired habit. Clear gives the simple example of wanting to start running.
Yeah?
By placing your running shoes right by the door, you're making the cue, the act of seeing the shoes, more obvious. It's like a visual reminder staring you in the face each morning.
Ah, I see. It's about removing any barriers to starting the habit, even mental ones. So how about make it attractive? How do we make habits appealing?
This is about tapping into your motivations and making the habit something you genuinely look forward to.
Okay.
Clear suggests joining a running club with friends to make running more attractive.
Oh, yeah.
The social interaction and shared experience can transform a dreaded chore into a fun activity.
That makes so much sense. It's about finding ways to associate positive feelings with the habit rather than forcing yourself to do it out of sheer willpower.
Exactly. Now, make it easy focuses on reducing friction and making the habit as simple as possible to start. Instead of overwhelming yourself with a 5-mile run, start with just 2 minutes.
Yeah,
The goal is to make the initial step so easy that you can't say no.
right. It's about lowering the bar for entry and building momentum from there.
What about the last law? Make it satisfying.
This is crucial because our brains are wired to crave rewards. So we need to make sure the habit itself is rewarding or has a satisfying payoff. This could be as simple as tracking your progress and celebrating milestones.
Right.
The feeling of accomplishment can be a powerful motivator.
So we've got to hack our brain's reward system and associate pleasure with those positive habits.
Precisely. And when you combine all four laws, making the habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, you create a powerful recipe for success. This framework is brilliant, but it makes me wonder, what about our mindset? How do our beliefs and self-image factor into habit formation?
That's a great question, and it leads us to one of the most insightful concepts in the book, the idea that our current behaviors reflect our current identity.
Ooh, here's where it gets really interesting. Tell me more.
Clearature argues that we don't just do things. We do things based on who we believe we are. If you see yourself as a healthy person,
Yeah,
you're more likely to make healthy choices.
right.
If you identify as a writer, you're more likely to write consistently. Your habits are an outward expression of your inner self-image.
That's a powerful concept. So it's not just about changing our actions, it's about changing our beliefs about ourselves.
Exactly, and that's where real transformation happens. It's about shifting your identity, becoming the type of person who embodies the habits you desire. Clearia asks a thought-provoking question: who do you want to be?
Hmm.
Because once you answer that question, you can start aligning your habits with that desired identity.
That's such a profound question. It forces us to think about our values, our aspirations, and who we ultimately want to become. And then we can use these 4 laws of behavior change to build habits that support that vision.
That's the core of it. And there's so much more to explore within Atomic Habits, like the power of habit loops, the role of our environment, and how to break those pesky bad
This
habits.
is already so insightful, and I can't wait to dive deeper.
It's fascinating how our habits operate within a cycle, this feedback loop that Clear calls the habit loop.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. How does this loop work?
The habit loop consists of 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. Think of it like a domino effect. First, there's a cue, a trigger, that sets the whole process in motion. It could be anything: a time of day, a location, a certain emotion, even another habit. The cue signals to your brain that a reward might be available.
Interesting. So the cue is like a little reminder that sets the wheels in motion.
Exactly. Next comes the craving. This is the motivational force behind the habit, the desire for the reward that the cue has promised. For example, if the cue is seeing a plate of cookies on the counter, the craving might be for the taste of sugar and the feeling of satisfaction it provides.
Yeah.
The craving is what drives us to take action.
So the craving is the why behind the habit. It explains why we're drawn to certain
Right.
behaviors.
Then comes the response, which is the actual habit itself. The action we take to fulfill that craving in our cookie example. The response would be reaching for a cookie and taking a bite.
So the response is the actual behavior, the thing we do out of habit.
Precisely. And finally, there's the reward. This is the payoff, the satisfying outcome that reinforces the entire loop in our cookie example. The reward is the delicious taste, the feeling of enjoyment, and maybe even a little boost of energy. That reward then reinforces the connection between the cue, craving, and response, making it more likely that we'll repeat the cycle the next time we encounter that same cue.
Okay, I see how this loop works now, but how does understanding the habit loop actually help us change our habits?
That's a great question. The beauty of the habit loop is that it gives us a framework for understanding and modifying our behaviors. Once we identify the cues, cravings, responses, and rewards within our own habit loops, we can start to make targeted interventions.
So we can actually hack the system. Can you give an example of how this might work in practice?
Absolutely. Let's say you're trying to break the habit of checking your phone first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that one.
By understanding the habit loop, you can start to dismantle it.
Okay,
The cue might be waking up and seeing your phone on your nightstand.
right.
The craving might be for the distraction or the feeling of being connected.
Yep.
The response is picking up your phone and scrolling through social media. And the reward is that feeling of stimulation or entertainment.
Okay, I see the pattern. So how would you use the habit loop to change this behavior?
Well, you could start by changing the cue. Maybe you put your phone in another room before bed so it's not the first thing you see when you wake up. Or you could address the craving by finding a more fulfilling alternative, like reading a book or going for a walk. You could even change the response by making it more difficult to engage in the habit, like setting up app blockers or putting your phone on airplane mode.
That's brilliant. By understanding the different stages of the habit loop, you can create a multi-pronged approach to changing the behavior.
Exactly. It gives you a roadmap for breaking down the habit into manageable steps. And the same principles apply to building good habits. You can make the cue more obvious, the craving more attractive, the response easier, and the reward more satisfying.
This is giving me so many ideas for how to approach my own habits. It's like having a new set of tools for self-improvement.
That's exactly what it is. It's about empowering yourself to take control of your habits and ultimately your life.
Now, I'm curious about the role of our environment in all of this. Claire talks a lot about environment design, right?
Yes, he does. And for good reason, our surroundings have a powerful influence on our behavior. They can either support or sabotage our habits.
Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. Clear shares a fascinating story about a hospital cafeteria.
Okay.
They redesigned the layout in a way that made healthier food choices more visible and convenient. They moved the salad bar to the front, placed fruit near the cash register, and made sugary drinks less accessible.
So they essentially made the healthier choice the easiest choice.
Exactly. And the results were remarkable. Just by changing the environment, they significantly increased the consumption of healthy foods.
That's incredible. It makes you realize how much we're influenced by these subtle cues in our environment, even without realizing it.
It's a powerful reminder that we don't always have as much conscious control as we think we do. Our environment is constantly nudging us in certain directions.
So how can we use this knowledge to our advantage? How can we design our environment to support our desired habits?
It's about being intentional and strategic with our surroundings. If you want to read more, make sure you have books readily available in your living space, not tucked away in a box in the attic. If you're trying to cut back on screen time, create a designated phone-free zone in your home.
It's like setting yourself up for success by
Yeah.
removing temptations and making positive choices easier.
Exactly. And it's not just about our physical environment. Our digital environment plays a huge role as well.
Yeah, that's true.
The apps we have on our phones, the websites we visit, the notifications we allow, all of these things are shaping our habits.
That's so true. It's like our phones are little habit-forming machines constantly vying for our attention.
They absolutely are. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of our digital environment and make conscious choices about how we interact with technology.
Okay, so we've talked about building good habits and the role of our environment. But what about breaking bad habits? Those can be so stubborn and difficult to overcome.
They can be, but Clear offers some valuable strategies for tackling them. One of the most effective is making bad habits impractical. Increase the friction, make it more difficult to engage in the undesired behavior.
So it's the opposite of what we do for good habits. Instead of making it easy, we make it hard.
It's about creating barriers to entry, making it less convenient to engage in the bad habit. Clear shares a fascinating story about the invention of the cash register.
Oh,
Back in the late 1800s, employee theft was a major problem for store owners because there was no reliable way to track transactions.
it was too easy to pocket some cash without anyone noticing.
Exactly, but then James Ritty invented the first cash register, which automatically locked the cash and receipts inside after each transaction.
Smart.
The simple invention made theft significantly more difficult, and it had a dramatic impact on employee behavior.
Wow, that's a brilliant example of how design change can completely alter a habit. So how can we apply this principle to our own bad habits?
It's about getting creative and finding ways to make the undesired behavior less appealing. If you're trying to cut back on spending, leave your credit cards at home when you go out. If you're trying to limit screen time, use website blockers or app timers to restrict your access if you're trying to eat healthier. Get rid of the junk food in your pantry.
It's about removing the temptation and making the bad habit less accessible, both physically and mentally.
Precisely, and it's not always easy. It takes effort and commitment. But with the right strategies, even the most stubborn bad habits can be broken.
This is so empowering. It makes me realize that we have more control over our habits than we often think. But I'm still curious about those days when we just don't feel motivated at all.
Yeah.
What do we do? Then how do we stay consistent even when we don't feel like it?
That's where the Goldilocks rule comes in.
Oh, I love this one. Not too hot, not too cold, just right.
Exactly. Clear explains that we experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are just challenging enough to keep us engaged, but not so difficult that they overwhelm us.
So we need to find that sweet spot, that perfect level of challenge that keeps us motivated and engaged.
Precisely. And one of the best ways to do that is by mastering the first 2 minutes of a new habit.
I'm not sure I follow. What do you mean by the first 2 minutes?
It's about making the starting point of the habit so easy that it's almost impossible to say no if you want to work out. Just focus on putting on your workout clothes. If you want to write, just open it a blank document and write one sentence. The key is to lower the bar for entry. Make that initial step so ridiculously easy that you can't talk yourself out of it.
Oh, I see. It's about building momentum, taking that initial step, even if it's a tiny one. And once you've started, it's much easier to keep going.
Exactly. Motion creates emotion. Just getting started, even in a small way, can trigger a cascade of motivation and make it easier to stay on track.
This is great advice, but I'm still curious about those days when we just don't feel motivated at all.
Yeah.
What do we do? Then how do we stay consistent even when we don't feel like it?
Clear has a powerful perspective on this. He argues that professionals stick to the schedule even when they don't feel motivated. They don't rely on inspiration or willpower. They show up and do the work regardless of their feelings.
So it's not about waiting for the motivation to strike. It's about showing up consistently even when we don't feel like it.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a discipline, a commitment to the process that transcends our fleeting emotions.
This is a challenging concept, but I can see how it would be incredibly beneficial if we can train ourselves to show up consistently. Regardless of our feelings, we can achieve amazing things.
It's about shifting our mindset from, I have to do this, to I get to do this. It's about embracing the process, even when it's not glamorous or exciting.
This is really resonating with me. It's a reminder that consistency is key and that showing up is often the hardest part.
It is, and once you've established that foundation of consistency, you can start to optimize your habits, fine-tune your approach, and make even greater progress.
I'm loving this deep dive. It's given me so many practical strategies to implement in my own life.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground already, from the habit loop to the 4 laws of behavior change to the importance of environment design. but I know there's still more to explore.
We haven't even touched on the power of habit tracking, the role of accountability partners, or how to deal with those pesky limiting beliefs that can hold us back.
I can't wait to dive into those topics. One of the things that really struck me about Atomic Habits was this emphasis on making habits satisfying.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, yet it's something we often overlook.
It is simple, right? But it's such a fundamental principle of human behavior. We're naturally drawn to things that feel good, and we tend to avoid things that feel bad. But, as Clear points out, our brains are wired to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed gratification. That's why it's so easy to reach for that cookie, even when we know it's not good for us in the long run.
That's so true. It's like there's this constant battle between our short-term desires and our long-term goals.
Exactly. And that's where the power of habit tracking comes in.
Oh, okay. Clear suggests keeping a visual record of your progress, whether it's marking an X on a calendar, using a habit tracking app, or simply keeping a journal.
Yeah, I've tried habit tracking before, and I find it can be really motivating to see those streaks building up.
Yeah.
But how does it tie into making habits satisfying?
Well, habit tracking provides visual proof of your progress. It's a tangible representation of your commitment and your consistency. Each time you check off that box or add another day to your streak, you get a little hit of dopamine,
Oh,
that feel-good neurochemical that reinforces positive behaviors. It's like giving yourself a mini reward for staying on track.
I see. It's like gamifying the process, making it more engaging and rewarding.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it also helps you stay focused on your goals and avoid breaking the chain of consistency. There's a psychological phenomenon called the endowment effect,
Okay.
where we tend to value things more highly simply because we own them. When you've built up a streak of successful days, you're less likely to want to break it because you've invested so much effort into creating it. That makes sense. It's like you've built up this valuable asset, this chain of success, and you don't want to throw it away.
Exactly. And speaking of reinforcement, another powerful strategy Clear recommends is finding an accountability partner.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that having someone to share the journey with can make a huge difference. It's like having a built-in support system.
Absolutely. It's about leveraging the power of social connection and shared commitment. Clear even suggests creating a habit contract
Interesting.
where you formalize the agreement with your accountability partner, outlining your goals, the consequences of not following through, and maybe even a little reward system for staying on track.
So it's like having a personal cheerleader and a referee all rolled into one.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It could be as simple as texting a friend each morning to check in on your progress or joining an online community of people who are working towards similar goals.
The key is to have someone who's going to support you, encourage you, and maybe even give you a little nudge when you need it.
Exactly. Accountability can be a powerful motivator. It helps us stay committed even when we're feeling tempted to give up.
This is all great advice, but I'm curious, what about those limiting beliefs that can hold us back even with the best strategies? Sometimes our own negative thoughts can sabotage our efforts.
That's so true. We all have those inner voices that tell us we're not good enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough. And those beliefs can create a lot of resistance, making it harder to establish positive habits.
Like we're our own worst enemies sometimes.
It can definitely feel that way, but Clear emphasizes the importance of challenging those limiting beliefs, questioning their validity, and replacing them with more empowering beliefs that support our growth.
So it's not just about changing our actions, it's about changing our thoughts as well. It's about shifting our mindset to one that's more aligned with our goals.
Precisely. And it's an ongoing process. Those negative thoughts might pop up from time to time, but we can learn to recognize them, challenge them, and choose to focus on more positive and supportive self-talk.
It's about becoming aware of our inner dialogue and making sure it's working for us, not against us.
Exactly. And that's where real transformation happens. It's about changing our beliefs about ourselves, about what we're capable of, and about what we deserve.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into atomic habits. It's given me so much to think about and so many practical strategies to implement in my own life. What about you? What's one key takeaway that's really resonated with you?
For me, it's the idea that small changes done consistently can create remarkable results. It's a message of hope and empowerment. It reminds us that we don't need to make drastic overnight transformations. We can achieve extraordinary things simply by focusing on making small, incremental improvements each day.
I love that it's about the power of tiny gains accumulating over time. And it's a reminder that we all have the ability to change, to grow, and to create the lives we want.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our habits and recognizing that they are the building blocks of our lives.
Well said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. If you enjoyed this deep dive into atomic habits, Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends because the right book really can change everything.
Thanks for joining us.
And keep those pages turning.